This episode is sponsored by Kendo UI. Kendo UI allows you to build better apps faster. They have a comprehensive library ranging from data grids and charts to buttons and sliders. Plus, you can use their components as plain JavaScript as well as in Angular, React, and Vue. They have a large collection of customizable popular themes like Bootstrap and Material. Go check them out at reactroundup.com/KendoUI. Hey everybody, we are live again at Build, and we are talking to Rachel MacFarlane and Matt Bierner. Do you folks want to say hi?
Hello. We are both developers on Visual Studio Code.
Hey. Awesome. Now, we had a little bit of a snafu recording, so you've already told me what you do, but do you want to tell the audience again?
Sure. So basically we talked about the month-to-month workflow of Visual Studio Code and sort of our process for that. So the breakdown is basically for the first week of a month, we'll work on reducing technical debt. We spend 2 weeks working on new features, and then we spend a week of testing and stabilizing. And so that's how we iterate quickly and produce monthly builds.
Very cool.
And I'm working on Visual Studio Code's JavaScript, TypeScript, and Markdown support, and then also doing some of the API design work. And just for the day-to-day way we go about doing our work, it's all pretty much out in the open. So we're working on GitHub, interacting with community members, triaging issues as they come in, following up with people as they report new issues or have feature requests, working with PRs and other things. And then as we're developing a new feature, we'll try to check it in incrementally and get it into insiders as fast as possible. So for a lot of TypeScript features that I'm adding, I'll check in an initial version that will be kind of in a preview state for insiders. And that code, when I check it in today, it will be in the build tomorrow. And everybody on the VS Code team, and then anybody that's using Visual Studio Code insiders, will be able to start testing it and providing feedback on it tomorrow as well. So it's a very rapid feedback cycle, and that's really, I think, key to working. And then it is very community driven. We are always interacting with the community, and a lot of the feature requests and way we prioritize work is coming through the community too.
That's interesting. I kind of want to dive into that just for a minute. Do you ever roll stuff back? You try it out, insiders try it, and it's like, yeah, that wasn't a good idea.
There's one example of this that happened pretty recently. So we've been making changes to where the search view shows up. So usually it's just in the sidebar, but we've added an option to also show it in the panel where the terminal is. And so as part of that work, we were trying to save as much vertical space as possible. So we combined the files to include and files to exclude boxes when you're searching. And we got a lot of feedback that people didn't like that, and they preferred to have them be separate. So we rolled that back and changed it back to the way that it had been before.
Very cool. So what's coming out new in Visual Studio Code? I mean, I remember like at Connect, they were showing off the live sharing. I guess it's a little more seamless now. But yeah, are there other things that people should be looking forward to?
So we mentioned that GitHub really determines what we're working on. So one of the top rated issues is grid view. So being able to support both vertical and horizontal splitting of editors. So that's something that's currently in the works for this iteration. Another thing that we're working on is improved settings UI. So currently the experience is when you look at your settings, there's sort of a split view where it shows you on the left side the default settings, and then on the right side you're just plopped into a JSON file where you're editing them.
I still haven't quite figured that part out.
Right, yeah, it's very confusing if you come there for the first time. You're not exactly sure what to do. So we're trying to have a more traditional settings UI there, and we're currently iterating on that. You can actually check it out in the Insiders build right now. There's a command to open settings experimental, which will show you what we're working on.
So is it not a JSON file then that you're editing? It's more
still
of a
JSON
visual
file, but the UI for it is friendlier.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and for people that do like editing the JSON file, it's still possible to get back to the old experience.
Long live the power user.
Yes.
Anything else that we should be talking about here?
Well, over in JavaScript and TypeScript land, we're picking up a new version of TypeScript this iteration. Probably the most exciting features are things like highlighting unused variables in your code, which is already possible if you configure some things specifically. But this will be for just out of the box, we'll be able to highlight when a variable or a parameter or an import is unused now. Some other exciting ones that are not quite in yet, but we're working on, are refactorings to move a class or a function to a new file. And also when you move a file in the Explorer, making sure that all the paths that reference it are also properly updated. So those are things we're actively working on, but aren't quite in insiders yet. We're also continuing to refine organize imports, make that a little bit easier to use. And then there's some nice new features around JS docs, a lot of improvements there.
Oh,
you
nice.
can start doing things like referencing a type from another file without actually importing it in your module. So you're not actually writing a require or an import statement. You can just put that in the JS docs directly.
Very nice. Now, I think when we talked before, you mentioned that, because I asked about other languages, and you said that that's all part of the API surface for Visual Studio Code itself. I guess what I'm wondering is, did you have to expand any of that, create any new APIs for that, or is that all just built in to the extension?
So the JavaScript and TypeScript support is just an extension.
Right.
It's one that ships with Visual Studio Code. And our built-in extensions are one way that we kind of push the API forward. We'll get a new requirement or something new that we need to support. For example, being able to respond when you rename a file. We don't have an API that allows you to do that as an extension currently.
Right.
But to support this feature in TypeScript, we'll need to add one. That's not to say that their built-in extensions are the only ones that are actually providing new API or pushing the API forward. There's other languages out there like Dart, and then all the ones that are using the language server protocol that are also coming in with feature requests all the time that we're adding to extend the API. It just happens that TypeScript is able to iterate pretty quickly, and they're often pushing the boundaries of what is possible. So they're a good one at actually making us think about what we need to support in the Visual Studio Extension API.
Nice. Yeah, I just switched over from Emacs. I've been an Emacs user for many years.
Right.
And I just switched over to Visual Studio Code, and mainly it was just because when I tried to switch over to IDEs, there was just way too much going on. And Visual Studio Code kind of splits the difference. And the extension support has gotten to the point now where it's worth me making that switch for my projects that I run in Ruby. So it's definitely cool work that you guys are doing. I'm really digging a lot of the stuff that's going on there. I'm curious, how do people follow along? You said you work in the open, and all this stuff's on GitHub. I mean, do you just star the repo or follow the repo, or is there some other way to keep track of what's going on?
I think that's a fair way to do it. We also have a pretty active Twitter account.
Okay.
So it's @code. If you want to follow that, we'll always tweet about new releases, new exciting features. So that might be a bit more digestible than just trying to look at the issues in our GitHub repo and figure out what we're doing from that.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about that, but last week I was trying to run a task, and I was like, I just need like a key map for this. So I tweeted @code, and I got a response from Eric Gamma. So
that's great. Yeah.
There's plenty of help out there.
Yeah, and definitely if you want to get the latest and greatest features beyond VS Code Insiders as well, that's where we're using day-to-day to develop. So we try to keep it pretty stable.
Right.
But that will have the changes from yesterday at the latest actually coming in. So you can see whatever new is being added. If you are looking at the GitHub repo, we have iteration plans we post each time for each month. So you could just go into GitHub and search May iteration and see all the things we're planning on working on.
Nice.
Those should link to the individual issues where you can follow along there. And if you are on GitHub and you see a feature you really want supported, make sure to use like the thumbs up emoji on that issue, because that is one way we go about judging which ones we should prioritize. So it's a good way to follow along.
Interesting. So do you do the iteration roadmaps 1 month at a time, or do you have some idea of what you're going to be working on in June?
So we do have a roadmap for the entire year, which is, of course, more general and sort of the areas we want to work on. And then sort of month by month, we'll figure out what exact features we want to ship.
Yeah. I'm also curious, you mentioned like the first week of the month you're working on technical debt.
Right.
I'm curious, does that ever manifest in any way that people would actually see, maybe in performance or speed or usability or anything like that?
Well, so some of those things are helping us manage the product better. So on GitHub, you'll notice that there's a VS Code bot that will reply with possible duplicates sometimes, or that will assign your issue automatically, or that will add labels to your issue automatically. So that's one thing that we implemented as part of making serviceability easier for us. Things like Rachel's worked on the issue reporter in the product as well. Those kind of go into making it easier for us to maintain and kind of fall into technical debt as well. We'll do a lot of internal refactorings too to make the code more maintainable, add tests or improve tests, make them more reliable, those type of things. So anything that's kind of slowing us down, that technical debt week is a good way to address those. And we'll also put like larger issues like the issue reporter. Those ones will be something that we will work on for a longer period of time. The technical debt week is just a nice opportunity for everybody on the team to look at whatever is slowing them down and really focus on that.
What other things do you think people miss about Visual Studio Code, or that you wish people knew about Visual Studio Code?
There are so many features. Sometimes discoverability is a big issue. So I've been talking to a lot of people at Build today. I've been staffing our booth. And sometimes people won't know about the command palette. Sometimes people won't know that we even have an integrated terminal.
Right.
So I think we've tried to basically expose those in different ways throughout the product so that people will find them. But sometimes people will just miss the fact that you can open up this little quick open and be able to quickly execute any action or do quick file search through that.
Yeah, folks, if you don't know how to do that, it's really helpful.
Yeah, Control P, Command P.
Yeah.
Use those.
Yeah, when I was talking to Amanda and Matt yesterday, and just a note to the listener, I did an interview yesterday, but the file's corrupted. So Richard and Carl are trying to recover that for me. But they mentioned that in the live sharing that you can do, that you can actually share your terminal and things like that. Or that's something that they were working on.
Yeah, I think that work's still in progress. I don't know if it's in the current extension version, but they are working on it.
Yeah. So if this comes out in a few weeks, hopefully it's there. And if not, then keep trucking, because it's something I'm excited for.
Well, one thing that I find with JavaScript users especially is that they're just used to basically using editors as a basic text editor. So as long as it kind of works for that, they're happy, and they don't realize that Visual Studio Code can actually provide completions and symbols and other things. You don't have to just use text search. You can actually search for a specific symbol and have it return the correct results. So that's really something that I wish people knew about more, is that in a lot of cases you can get proper completions. You can even do things like have TypeScript check your JavaScript code to see if there are any conflicting types based on JS doc parameters. So it's say your function takes a string and you're passing in a number. You can actually use the TS check feature to enable features like that.
Nice.
And I think that's another discoverability thing. Like, a lot of people don't even know that's possible and don't know that it should be possible in their editor. So we're always trying to inform people about those type of features.
Yep, absolutely. And I've seen this with some of the other language services too. So I've done some Ruby and some other languages in VS Code. And yeah, those services provide a lot of that too. So it's a really, really handy thing.
So do you have any extensions that you find most helpful then?
I think one of my favorites that I've just started playing with is the Docker extension.
Oh, yeah.
And they've talked about it at past conferences and, kind of made a big deal out of it. But I've really gotten into a lot of the automation space. And so just being able to run a task that runs my tests, or run a task that runs the linter, or, doing the Docker setup and having that just kind of present so that when I push to CI and CD, it just does what it's supposed to do, and making that deployment seamless. I really want to dig into the Azure extension a little bit more and see if maybe I just want to start doing deployments up there, because currently I'm deploying to a server that's a virtual private server in somebody else's cloud, and so it's kind of a process to deploy it. And I have it scripted, but I think it'd be nice just to be able to say, oh, here's a new Docker container, and swap it out.
Right, yeah.
So those are some of the things that I'm looking at right now. I also find, though, that a lot of companies are either worried about expanding their headcount, or they can't find the people that they want to expand their headcount with, right? They have the spot open, they're looking to hire, but they just can't find somebody with the kind of experience that they want. And so, I'm like, well, do some of this automation, get that stuff out of your hair, and that way the people that you're hiring to, maintain a little bit of that and then contribute in the ways that are really meaningful to your business. Because there's no reason to go through the process of jumping through all the hoops to get your thing deployed when you can just write a script and basically have it happen, or build it into a container and have it just pushed. And so, yeah, that kind of a thing. It seems like Visual Studio Code has a lot of extensions that make that a lot easier.
Well, around the automation thing, that's also something we've been working on as a team, because we're a fairly small team. And when you have 100 new issues coming in overnight on GitHub, that can quickly become a little unmanageable. So that's one reason we've invested in bots and other tooling to try to make sure that those issues are diagnosed without with as little human intervention as possible. Just minimize the boring, repetitive work that's part of that, so that it gets addressed by somebody as soon as possible and handled the right way. So that's been really helpful to have, and it reduces a lot of the stress. One of the ways that we work as well is that we'll have somebody who's actually diagnosing when the bot doesn't auto-assign an issue on GitHub. somebody will actually be the issue tracker for the week. And some issues are just too vague for the bot to handle.
Right.
So the issue tracker will look at those issues and then ask the necessarily follow-up questions and then actually assign it to the correct owner. And everybody on the team goes through that role. It's a really good way to get a pulse on what types of things people are running into, what types of features they're requesting. And we have everybody from Eric to me actually doing this issue triaging, which when you think about it is kind of crazy to have somebody as senior up as Eric actually triaging issues, but that's just the distance between us and the community we have. There's zero distance there.
This episode is sponsored by DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is the hosting provider I use for devchat.tv. I also use it for my applications that manage the RSS feeds, scheduling, and sponsorships involved in delivering these shows. DigitalOcean is easy to use, has data centers all over the world, and provides terrific services including server hosting and object storage for delivering your web applications and assets quickly and easily. I use DigitalOcean because I love their interface. I get SSD storage for my servers, and their support replies quickly. So go check them out at digitalocean.com. Well, and I think that's important. Also, speaking to, having a bot to triage your issues and things like that. I mean, yeah, I personally, as a Visual Studio Code user, I want you guys putting in as many awesome features as you can, right? And so if you get the same question 10 times, yeah, I'm happy having a bot go, oh, that's solved, here it is. Or, okay, we're going to push this to the right person so they can help you figure out, what you need to know. And, it saves all of you time, and then I get a better product because of it. So, but yeah, I also love just the idea of, Eric replied to me on Twitter, and he's looking at issues when it's his turn. And so nobody's so far removed from things to where they're saying, you know what, let's put this crazy feature in here that nobody's going to actually want.
Yep.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's the features we want.
Yeah. Well, and if you're working in it every day, there's that too, right?
Right.
Is, if you're building Visual Studio Code with Visual Studio Code, if it's a pain to use, you guys are going to feel it.
Right, exactly.
And that's really helpful to know and to hear about. Mm-hmm. So what's your favorite feature of Visual Studio Code?
There are so many.
For me, it's a pretty simple one. I was using things like Eclipse or Sublime before for editing JavaScript. And you can configure those to provide IntelliSense. But I never really realized how good the experience could be until going to Visual Studio Code and actually setting everything up properly for that, where it can provide proper suggestions and actually understand what types of properties are available and catch common programming errors. So I just never had that type of experience before in a JavaScript editor of any type. I know that you can configure Sublime and other editors to do that. I just had never been able to do it properly before Visual Studio Code.
Right. How about you?
I think similar answer. I really love all of the IntelliSense. I also really love auto imports. I work in TypeScript, so that's really great. I don't have to think about where to import this from, what is the path. I just type away and it's imported, and I move on with my life. I love that.
That's one I haven't seen yet.
Really?
Yeah. So I haven't done a whole lot of Angular in it yet, though. So.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it will show exported functions from anywhere in your project where you just type out the name and it'll automatically add the import at the top of the file.
Nice.
Yeah.
I'm going to get hooked on that.
Also, I really like terminal splitting, which is something that's been added pretty recently. I use the terminal a lot, and I'll frequently have some long-running task, like a watch task, and then I'll have split it so that I can do whatever I want side by side. That's just really nice.
Yep.
Yeah, and even just having an integrated terminal in the first place is a great feature. Because I know we have all the Git management stuff that you can use in the editor, but sometimes you just want to run a Git command directly in the terminal. You just pop it open for a second, run Git commit or whatever you're looking to do, and then continue editing. So it's really convenient.
Gotcha. So one other thing that I'd like to ask is Visual Studio Code shares the name with Visual Studio, but to me they're pretty different. So what is the relationship between Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio?
They are different products, even though they share the same name. And they have somewhat different philosophies, but there are a lot of little common things between the two products. So we'll use the same terms for a lot of things. We'll try to share the same key bindings for a lot of things. But I think Visual Studio Code was more designed to focus on web developers. It's cross-platform, so you can get it on your Mac, on Linux, on Windows. And it has a slightly different philosophy where it's much more extension heavy. We try to provide a solid core and then build up what you can do using extensions. Visual Studio is great for C#, C++, all those type of environments. It's more traditional for server type development, mobile or desktop application type development. You can use it for web development, just like you can use Visual Studio Code for developing server applications, but they are kind of focused on different areas there. And we try to make it easy to go between the two products by having those common key bindings and common terminologies at least, but there are different workflows when you're switching between them.
Gotcha. It also seems like Visual Studio Code splits the difference between being a full-on IDE and a text editor. And so I wonder a little bit, how do you decide what to put in and what not to put in? So that you don't overload it with too much stuff or, affect performance or, any of the other, things that I could see coming up as you try and add more stuff in.
Right. Yes, that's something we think about a lot because we don't want it to be a bloated product. We want to keep it very lightweight and simple. So we'll always ask, would this be better for an extension? Does this actually belong in the core product before we start working on something?
Gotcha. That makes sense. And I guess I didn't really think about the extension model, but yeah. Then if you want that fancy schmancy tool that not everybody needs, you just put it in extension.
Right.
And then if it makes your development life better, then great. And if somebody else doesn't want it, they don't have to have it.
Exactly, yeah.
And the extensions are all designed so that they are lazily loaded, so that starting Visual Studio Code should always be fast. And then if you need the advanced, Docker extension, for example, that will load a little bit after, and it'll be loaded when you first need it.
Right.
So it should never actually slow down starting Visual Studio Code or getting to that core editor experience. And that was a very intentional decision that was made early on with the whole extension API, and I think it's really paid off.
Yeah, I think so too. So how do you test Visual Studio Code?
So I guess I can sort of describe our end game process when we are preparing for a release. So basically every team member will submit a GitHub issue that is a test plan item that says this new feature needs to be tested. And everyone on the team will be assigned some set of those items and they'll have to go test them. And then over the course of the week, they'll report bugs and the owner will fix those things.
Right.
And then anything that's been fixed or closed in that month will also be tagged as needing verification. And so we'll go through all of the bugs, all of the small features, and verify all of those. And then as we're coming closer to the release, when we actually have a build prepared, we will always do a sanity test. So everyone will install it on each platform and just make sure that everything works and is sensible. We also have some automated testing that we run. That's it.
Yeah, and we have the unit test, integration test, those type of things that are being run. For testing more abstract things like the new settings UI, and you can't really test what the UI feels like. You just need to kind of use that. The insiders builds are really helpful. So we'll get a lot of good feedback through that and try to get people using it as soon as possible and providing that feedback.
Yeah, I've been using the stable builds. Is there a reason why I should look into using the insiders builds?
Well, we try to keep them pretty stable because that's what we're working on. So that's one reason you might consider using them, is that they should be pretty stable. The other reason is if you want the latest and greatest features. So you see the AdCode account tweeting out some cool new feature and they have a fancy GIF showing it off. If you want to use that feature, you probably need to be on Insiders to try it out right away. It will be in the next monthly release as well. But the Insiders builds are a great way to see the latest and greatest changes.
Gotcha.
It's also incredibly helpful to us, so we appreciate when when anyone uses Insiders. Yeah,
that makes sense too. You kind of get that smell test, I guess, before everybody gets it and goes, whoa.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah, and they're great at catching scenarios that you didn't realize even existed. So maybe somebody has a very specific project configuration that the new feature you added didn't quite support. And you would have never thought of that otherwise. Having all these users on Insiders is a great way to catch those type of bugs.
That sounds like just building software in general, right?
Yes.
Oh, look, it works. And then somebody comes along and says, I'm going to use it this way. And it turns out, no, it doesn't work for them. And you've got to have all kinds of people using it for all kinds of things, right? So,
yeah, there's a lot of different communities that are using Visual Studio Code. So JavaScript and TypeScript and web developers, and then there's big communities around Go and other languages. A lot of people using it for Python, C# too.
Yep.
So there's a lot of distinct communities that all have their own needs and interests.
Yeah, I can tell you the communities that I serve, it's made some pretty major inroads in, I wouldn't say major in Ruby, but people are starting to pick it up. But yeah, JavaScript, all of the different frameworks that we have shows for, yeah, they're all picking it up and using it because all of the tooling is pretty seamless and it just tells you what you need to know or do with your stuff. So yeah, there's definitely the payoff there. And, it's like I want it to do stuff for me, but I don't want it to be in my way.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And yeah, I think it strikes a pretty good balance that way.
Well, I think that kind of captures the philosophy of VS Code pretty well, actually, is not getting in the way, but also enabling a lot of powerful features like debugging that just weren't available or hard to perform before, especially around JavaScript.
Yep, absolutely. So are there things that are coming down the pike a little bit further out that you're excited about? Or
So one thing we just shipped recently, API-wise, for extension authors is the WebView stuff. So this is basically like an iframe that users or extension authors can customize in the editor, and it lets them make their own UI and other experiences in the editor. It's really powerful.
Cool.
So you can build things like visualizing tables or databases or other things. Or you can make entire interactive experiences. And I'm kind of interested in seeing what types of things develop there. I don't think we want like email programs showing up in VS Code, for example, but I think it does enable, if used wisely, it enables some really cool experiences that people could create, where just right in the editor, you can suddenly have all these neat visualizations or interactive experiences.
That's it. I know it's Chromium. I'm going to pull in some Canvas stuff and Super Mario. Here we come.
Yeah.
Very cool. Any other features you've just released that you want to talk about, or should we?
I've been working on something called the Process Explorer. This is a tool specifically for diagnosing performance issues.
Ah, nice.
But basically, whenever someone reports something, we want to know if someone says like this, there's high CPU. We want to know what process exactly is causing it.
Right.
Because we have a multi-process architecture, there's a ton of different things going on, and sometimes it'll actually just be a misbehaving extension. And so we want to be able to pinpoint it. So the Process Explorer is just another window that will pop up and basically just list out everything that's running and their CPU usage and memory. So it's just a nice diagnostic tool to have.
Yeah, that sounds terrific. I mean, performance problems are some of the hardest ones to track down, right? Because it actually works, so what's slowing it up?
Exactly, yeah.
And yeah, that's really handy.
And we do get a lot of issues that are reported where it's actually an extension that's causing the problem. So maybe the extension overwrites some key binding and suddenly the feature doesn't work anymore. So this can help track down issues where extensions are misbehaving and maybe using up too much CPU or memory.
That makes sense. Kind of reminds me a little bit of like browser plugins.
Yes.
It's like, why won't this page work right? And it turns out you have a browser plugin that's messing with it.
Yeah.
Same kind of thing.
Well, for JavaScript and TypeScript users, one neat feature that we've been focusing on recently is organized imports. So we added a preview of this in the previous release, and in the current release, it's out of preview now. This command will remove any unused imports in your file and then sort the remaining imports. So you can just run it and just automatically will remove anything that's not in use. We're improving this, so we recently added features like being able to run this whenever you save a file, which is super useful, so you never even need to run the command now. And we're continuing to tweak it and add other improvements in this current iteration. The other big thing that we're working on is always adding new refactorings for JavaScript and TypeScript. So things like extract method, extract constant. I think we have some other cool ones coming down in the pipeline here as well. But these are kind of cool features that I never even thought would be possible in JavaScript and TypeScript before. But the TypeScript team has done a great job implementing these for both languages.
Yeah, and those are the kinds of features that I usually expect to see in an IDE. And it's like, yeah, that's really handy, but, with all the other myriad things in the IDE, it's just like, okay, well, I can live without that. So getting it in a text editor-like environment, that sounds terrific. All right, well, I'm going to start heading us toward wrapping up the show. And one of the things that we do on our shows is we do picks. And it's just kind of an opportunity to just show off who you are and give people recommendations for cool stuff. So a lot of folks will do like TV shows or movies they've seen or books or, sometimes it's technology tools too. So, you can pick your favorite extension or something. But yeah, anything like that. So I'm going to go ahead and make Matt go first. And put him on the spot.
Do you run your own freelance business? Or maybe you're thinking about picking up some business on the side? Well, then you need FreshBooks. FreshBooks is the quickest and easiest way to get invoices out to your clients. It's easy to use. It works anywhere, available from any device, on the desktop, iPhone, iPad, Android, and all of your data is backed up and secure. And it makes it really easy to get organized and get paid. You'll be tracking time, logging expenses, and invoicing your clients in no time. You can also save time billing, freeing up several days per month to focus on the work that you love, and you get paid faster. FreshBooks customers are paid on average 5 days faster because there's a link on the invoice that says pay me now. And it's a great way to grow your business. Plus, FreshBooks is offering a 30-day trial. That's right, 30-day trial if you try them out. So go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section. Once again, for a 30-day trial, go to gofreshbooks.com/devchat and enter devchat in the How Did You Hear About Us section.
I'm not trying. Sorry, I'm freezing. I can't think of anything that would work.
I can jump in there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So one extension that I use all the time that I really like is called Git Lens. And so this adds a lot of functionality around Git history and Git blame. So one thing that it does that's very simple is it just adds sort of an annotation next to your current line where your cursor is that says, this person edited this line this many months ago or this many weeks ago. So that gives a lot of insight into how frequently has this code been changing and who's been working in this file.
Right.
So I find that very useful.
Nice. I can jump in with some picks. So just being out here, I've been going through some personal stuff, and sometimes I've just needed downtime, right? So like yesterday, I recorded an episode, and then I went back to my hotel and had a nap. But, some of the other things that I've been doing just to kind of unwind, I've been watching a show. It's a BBC America show. It's called Orphan Black.
Oh, I love that show.
Yeah, it's a terrific show. I watched the first, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. And then, because I watch it on Amazon Prime, we cut the cord, so I don't watch it on TV. But yeah, I've really been enjoying that. Just started watching it over because I was like, I can't remember all the intricate interactions between all the characters. So that's been fun just to sit and unwind. I also really liked the new Avengers movie, Infinity War. I kind of wish that they had wrapped up the storyline, but they kind of didn't.
Yeah.
So.
Have to wait another year for that, I guess.
That's right. But, it was fun, and it was fun to see all those characters. So I've been enjoying that as well. And then, I've been planning ways that I can spend time with my kids this summer. And so I'm really looking forward to picking up some fishing gear and just taking my kids out fishing. So those are some of the things that I've kind of been thinking about as far as picks and things that I want to shout out about.
Well, if you have Amazon Prime, I recently discovered they have a pretty good collection of dystopian 1980s Italian sci-fi movies, which is a very unique subgenre. So imagine like rip-offs of Mad Max. So I've been watching some of those, and they're very cheesy but very entertaining at the same time. So I think the recent one I watched was called The Bronx Warriors, which was not set in the Bronx at all, even though I think it was supposed to be. It was set in what looked like the middle of the desert, and then they were saying that it was supposed to be New York.
Are they in English or Italian?
They are in English, so just dubbed over in most cases. But they're exactly as cheesy as you would imagine them to be, but super entertaining.
That's too bad. Well, I lived in Italy for 2 years, so
okay.
I would much rather just watch them in Italian, but that sounds interesting. Cheesy Italian. Yeah, that's awesome. All right. Well, anything else you want to shout out about or mention before we wrap this up? No?
No. I think we covered it.
How do people find you online? I'm assuming you're on Twitter, maybe blogs, stuff like that?
GitHub. Find me on GitHub.
Yeah, I have a Twitter account that I'll tweet things about Visual Studio Code. So if there's a new TypeScript or JavaScript feature, I'll often send out a tweet announcing that so people can try it in insiders. And if you have any feedback, just open a GitHub issue and it'll get assigned to me, hopefully, by the bot.
Awesome. What are your handles on GitHub and Twitter?
R. MacFarlane.
And I'm just Matt Bierner.
All right. Well, thanks for coming and talking to me for an hour or so, and really appreciate you taking the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.